We want to hear, what is the secret sauce? What does it take? And he also has a new podcast that he's launched. He's about a year in, I believe. And so he's doing some really cool things. We want to hear your story, Professor Scott Davis.
And, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to knock you over there. Since I'm a professor and I have a big ego, that was 70,000 on one video, right? Not cumulative, but I attended the first LinkedIn Local Houston, and I had such a good time that I think I hung around enough that they thought maybe we should ask this guy to speak because he's really into this. But I think the real reason that Tracy and also Brandon wanted to have me involved with this event is because I'm painfully introverted, and I don't dress well, and I'm not terribly attractive, but I've figured out how to communicate my story. So if I can do it, if I can use LinkedIn to get my story out there and have all of the good things that flow from that happen to me, then anyone can do it, because everyone who spoke before me has a more interesting story than I do. But I've found a way to reach people. I've found a way to reach people who are kind of in my tribe, in my wheelhouse. And I think that I can help you get some ideas on how you can do that as well. So as a professor, the reason I first jumped into LinkedIn is that I went through the profiles of my students because we were trying to help them get better jobs, get better placements out of school. And I found that every accounting major looked exactly the same on LinkedIn. Every marketing major looked exactly the same on LinkedIn. And I teach marketing, right? It's all about differentiation and positioning. So the first thing I did was, well, I went and I kind of tuned up my own profile because I wanted to live what I was kind of preaching to my students. So the first thing that I would tell you, and everyone tells you have to make your profile look nice and things like that, but make sure just the basics, your headline jumps in some way. I'm not just a marketing professor. I'm the marketing professor who thinks our field is a little bit broken, and I want to try to bridge that gap between marketing theory and the real world. So right away, I'm kind of reaching a few different audiences there, and even people who never went to college, they're really kind of dubious of what a professor has to say, I can draw them in with this idea that, hey, I'm trying to bridge these gaps. So figure out, what is that for you? What makes you stand out in your field? And get that in front of people right away, in your headline, in your summary. And fortunately, LinkedIn has all kinds of cool stuff that you can do to tell your story in a unique way. You can now put video in your summary, which is automatically going to make you stand out from just about everyone else. So if you kind of have your own pitch, right? We're all our own salespeople on LinkedIn. So you have your pitch and your summary, just 1 minute, what you're all about. If a recruiter, for example, if you're looking for a job, goes onto your profile and you have a video, right? This shows them who you are. It's not just, oh, I'm reading something. It's basically just, I've pasted my resume from here to here. That's not interesting. But if they watch you for 1 minute, they see how dynamic you are, they see what makes your story interesting, then they want to bring you in for an interview. So take advantage of the tools that LinkedIn offers. But I think in terms of communicating your story, the most important thing is that we didn't call it telling your story, right? This is not me just telling my story to the masses. Communication implies that there's some kind of exchange happening, and that's where LinkedIn is really powerful. So don't just go there and kind of try to create this feed with tons of video and podcasts and text posts about what you're doing. You need to engage with the people that you need to be communicating with. If you're trying to get promoted at work, if you're trying to find a new job, if you're trying to build your network in Houston, that's going to tell you right away who your target audience should be, and you need to be on their feeds, making really thoughtful comments on the things that they're posting and liking their posts. You would be amazed at, because LinkedIn is still, I know it seems huge, but it's really a small community when you start making these one-on-one connections. I've had the president of my university has flagged me down when he saw me on campus because I like all of his stuff and I share it, and my audience is a little bit bigger than his is. And tomorrow I have lunch with the CMO of Mahindra, right? This huge multinational company that came from India and is taking over Texas in the farming industry. I never would have had a lunch set up with this guy because, like I said, I'm painfully introverted. I'm not just going to pick up the phone and call up Mahindra Tractor, right? He came across my content because I've been building all these connections, and then some of my connections are friends with him, and that's kind of how this works. Mensa invited me to speak at their national conference this year. That's crazy, right? I don't even like going to conferences. So I'm getting all these cool opportunities just because I have all this content that I'm putting out. But not just that, I'm looking at everyone else's content and I find it inspirational. It's not like I'm just liking their stuff and making comments because I want that reciprocation. I'm actually drawing a lot of inspiration. I find almost every guest that I get for my podcast through someone else's feed. They're highlighting someone else's accomplishments. And then where's Nigelon? Nigelon's a great example of how these connections can work. He's taking cool photos of me right now, right? That was a really bad pose, but he's taking cool photos of me right now. Nigelon, I met him through LinkedIn Local Houston. He came to take headshots of my MBA class. So that's such an amazing connection. I never would have been able to make a connection with a photographer like that if I was just going about my everyday life where I'm living kind of, insulated and introverted the way that I typically do. So another thing that I would tell you is don't be scared. Like in the last year, I've created, I think, 24 podcast episodes. If you told me at the beginning of that journey that I would do that in a year, I would have told you you're crazy because I'm really busy and I'm not particularly good in front of a microphone. Again, I'm sorry. But I made all these videos and they've gotten all these views. And the thing is, the first video I made was 10 minutes. It was very highly produced and it took me about 3 weeks to make. And I think 300 people watched it. The next video I made, I took my iPhone out at Whole Foods, and I was like, isn't it interesting that Whole Foods puts all these store labels on the end caps so that that's the first thing that you go to, because we don't want to go up and down the aisles at Whole Foods, and then that gets tens of thousands of views. It took me like 45 seconds to shoot that video, but it's something that's interesting. So don't feel like you have to have this overly produced content for LinkedIn. Just document your life. You're interesting. You're doing interesting things. People want to know what it's like to be in your shoes. And we have these pretty capable video cameras in our pocket all the time. So just take it out, film some video. No one wants 10 minutes on LinkedIn. Just put up a 1-minute video that tells a little bit about who you are. Hopefully you've already built some kind of network by engaging before you put that video out there. But that's all it takes, right? I interviewed someone who puts out a 1-minute video every day, and she's like the #1 video influencer on LinkedIn, Goldie Chan. And that's all she does. She goes to Disneyland because she lives next door, and she just shoots videos, her ideas about marketing, and now her ideas about LinkedIn video. So don't be overwhelmed by, oh, I've never been on video before, I've never done a podcast before. You can make podcasts on your phone now, right? It's really amazing. So we have all the tools that we need. You just have to get out there and create. And I mentioned Nigelon earlier. I think this was something that he went through. His first video, he just kind of created on the fly because he went to LinkedIn Local Houston and everybody was like, oh, you have to make content. So he made it. And now he's making like crazy, highly produced videos because he got so into it. And once you start to get some kind of positive response to what you're doing on LinkedIn, you're going to want to do that too. But the gateway to that is just making real simple 1-minute iPhone videos. I never imagined that my podcast would have a following and that people would actually sign up for my mailing list, but it's crazy. My students, before I even go into class on the first day, many of them know who I am because when they search for me on Google, and I have a very common name, Scott Davis, but if they search for Scott Davis Professor, they find my LinkedIn, they'll start listening to my podcast episodes, and they're trying to suck up to me, but they'll say, oh, I listened to your interview with Lee Cockrell at Disney, and it was so cool, and it inspired me to do this. And I can have that impact on them before I ever step foot in the classroom, and then they can't say, who is this awkward, dorky guy that's going to be teaching us marketing? They already have a positive impression of me from that social presence that I've been putting out there. So my wife asked me, she said, so are you kind of the cleanup hitter tonight? And I said, well, I looked at who else is speaking. I think I'm batting the 9 hole actually by being last. So thank you for bearing with me. But truly, if you have any questions about this isn't natural for you, I hate being in front of a camera. I hate being in front of a microphone. How do I actually make my voice heard? How do I not wait for people to come to me on LinkedIn? How do I go out to them? How do I use LinkedIn search tools to find jobs instead of waiting for recruiters to find my profile? Let me know. I'm happy to have that dialogue with you. Thank you very much. I think we're going to open it up to you now. Is that correct? No. Oh, Eddie. We're going to open it back up to Eddie.
Thank you, Scott.